Live stream audio test 1, 2. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Executive of North Somerset Council. I'm Steve Bridger, leader of the council. I will actually ask my exec colleagues in a minute to introduce themselves, probably under item 2, colleagues. But before that, and before we move to the formal agenda, just the usual housekeeping remarks. So I'd like to welcome everyone to this face-to-face meeting of the Executive of North Somerset Council in the new council chamber. There's an option to join the meeting via Microsoft Teams for those councillors and officers who do not feel comfortable attending in person or are unable to do so this afternoon. They will be able to take part, but not be in attendance formally. And if a member of the executive will be unable to vote or count towards the quorum of the meeting. We're streaming today's meeting live on the internet, and a recorded version will be available to view within around 48 hours, usually before actually, on the North Somerset Council website and YouTube, and so on. So thank you for that. Just moving on to the formal agenda. Item 1, addresses by members of the public. I don't think there are any. Nick, thank you. Item 2, apologies for absence. So I think, as I said, I think this is the first meeting, exec meeting, since the annual meeting on the 10th of May, where we made some changes, obviously. So I would like to ask my exec colleagues, I think, to introduce themselves as a way of getting our attendance in line for that. So start with you, Mike.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Bell. I am the Deputy Leader of Council and the Executive Member for Adult Services, Health and Housing.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Caniford and I'm the Executive Member for Placemaking and Economy.
Good afternoon. I'm Ash Cartman. I'm the Executive Member for Corporate Services.
Good afternoon, I'm Catherine Gibbons and I'm the Executive Member for Children's Services, Lifelong Learning and Skills.
Good afternoon on this lovely sunny afternoon in Weston-super-Mare. My name is Mike Solomon and I'm the Executive Member for Neighbourhoods and Community Services.
Good afternoon everybody, my name is Steve Hogg. I'm the Executive Member for Highways and Transport.
Thank you very much indeed, colleagues. I think we're missing Councillor Bridget Petty, but she's on the way.
Yeah, so Councillor Petty said she's running late due to bus issues, which is rather ironic given the agenda of our improvement plan, I rather feel.
And Leader, not a member of the executive, but I've received apologies from Councillor Ashton.
Thank you, Nick. Item 3, trustee but important standing order number 37, declaration of disclosable pecuniary interests. Are there any colleagues? I don't think there are. Item 4, the minutes of the last meeting, which was the 27th of April this year. I was only present online due to testing positive to COVID. Mike, as the deputy leader, I think you were also gave your apologies. So I'm assuming there are no comments or amendments, so I am looking for a colleague, I think, to propose acceptance. Thank you, Mark. And a seconder? Thank you. Thanks, Ash. Are we all in favour? Yep. Thank you. I'll sign those in a second. Item 5, non-executive councillors' addresses. None received. Karin. Yeah, you can have a go.
I'm sorry, I did raise it with the executive members concerned, but I didn't inform you officially. I hope that's okay.
Didn't come through to me, but the floor's yours.
I've got 2 items. The first one, which I've already raised with our health and safety officers and also with our corporate services executive members who are all seem to be quite supportive, is a COVID safety pledge. And it's a pledge which has been designed by a group of eminent British and I think some international scientists, chaired by Sir David King, who was the previous chief scientific advisor for one of our governments in the past. So very eminent scientists. And it's a very simple pledge, actually. It's one that complies with current legislation, which is health and safety legislation, but doesn't seem to actually be implemented very well. So it's called, we pledge to protect our staff, users and customers from COVID-19. We will assess our physical environment and working practices according to health and safety law, including risk assessments, in order to ensure that they are designated to safeguard against the spread of infection. And third, we will abide by best public health advice and ensure that all employees who test positive for COVID are both asked and given adequate support to stay home and self-isolate. I believe we're already implementing all of those measures, so it's nothing untoward. It's just, it'll allow us to display this pledge and then also ask some of our local businesses to follow suit. We lead by example that way. So I was going to ask Bridget to support it via communications as well. And of course, Councillor Bell from the health aspect. So that's my number one item. Number two item is quite a different one. It's directed to our new executive member, Councillor Hogg, and it's a proposal to try and help the asylum seekers, which are now resident in our district. And my proposal is to subsidize transport for them, because that is their top list of priorities. They're nearly all city people. They're currently resident in a very isolated spot where they can't even walk safely along the A38, and they want to get into Bristol. They get £8.27 per week once they actually get some money. Some don't get anything in the early stages, and a ticket to Bristol costs £7. So what I'm proposing is that North Somerset Council subsidises transport for asylum seekers to enable each resident to take one trip to Bristol every week. I propose to do this by subsidising bus tickets rather than fuel for community buses, because it supports our buses, is more environmentally sound, and gives asylum seekers more flexibility. A bus ticket from the Holiday Inn to Bristol costs £7. Falcon Bus has offered a discount of 30% due to Councillor Patrick Keating negotiating with them. And I propose we approach First Bus to ask for a similar discount. I understand that North Somerset Council has recently purchased bus tickets from First Bus for Ukrainian refugees and resettlement families at a discount of 10%. So maybe they ought to be able to compete with Falcon and give a bit more. I also propose that North Somerset Council purchases these discounted tickets in bulk, and I propose that North Somerset Council adds another discount of between £1.50 and £4. This means that the cost of a ticket to an asylum seeker would be between £1 and £3.50. So they will have to contribute something, but it'll be a little bit more affordable for them. And I've made three assumptions: that the number of asylum seekers, for costing it, the number of asylum seekers that the hotel can accommodate is 168. They estimate that the average length of stay per person is 3 months, or 13 weeks. And I believe that North Somerset Council receives £3,500 per asylum seeker. So that my subsidy would constitute between 0.6% and 1.5% of that amount. So it's a very small amount, but I think it would actually make a big difference to the asylum seekers, which happen to share our district with us at the moment. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Havison. Karen, thank you. On the first point, I'm not sure if, Ash, if you want to respond.
Yes, on the first point, we've been speaking, haven't we? So we're absolutely fully committed to that. I think the final thing we need to do is just consult with unions and employee representative groups just to make sure they're fine, which I'm sure they will be. But apart from that, let's get on with it.
Thanks, Councillor Cartman. And then on the your second point, Corinne, I think we can make a decision on that, but Steve, do you want to make a
Thank you.
comment?
Yes, I'm happy to take that. So obviously, Karen, we've been speaking about this. The Holiday Inn is actually in my ward as well. So we've currently got, although there's capacity for 168 guests there, there's 110 at the moment. And in terms of it being a 3-month stay, we think in many cases, actually, it's a great deal more than that. It can be up to 12 months, actually. I did make some inquiries. I mean, the specific ask, you've modelled it very well, and I think I'll need to take that away and sort of look in detail at the specifics of what you're proposing. But just in the spirit of what you're proposing, I contacted the resettlement team, who advised that they would be making 3 months, giving 3-month free tickets on First Bus for the residents. And actually, just last weekend, I took a car full of residents up to the Bristol Refugee Festival at Eastville Park on Sunday, and all of the guests that came in the car with me said that they were getting free travel on First Bus. So they said they were getting free tickets on First Bus. So somehow they've tapped into that resource that is quite rightly being made available for Ukrainians. And of course, you know, we do need to respond very positively. It's quite interesting, actually, just on a more general point about the way that we are treating people who are seeking refuge from other countries, is that, you know, I also have a Ukrainian refugee who is living with me at the moment, and, you know, the irony wasn't lost on me when, having collected her £200 from the local authority and got herself registered with a national insurance number and a right to remain for 3 years and to work, we drove from the airport past the Holiday Inn to get to my house. And it just highlights, I think, how we sort of are quite selective about how we deal with this issue. So, you know, I'm very, very supportive. I'll look at the detail in the proposal in detail, but just for now, hopefully you'll get some reassurance that, you know, we are doing something.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg, and thanks, Councillor Cartman again. Karen, thank you for raising those 2 points. Item 7 on the agenda, West of England, item 6, matters referred to the executive and not dealt with elsewhere on this agenda. There are none of those. Item 7, West of England sub-region, items not dealt with elsewhere on this agenda. I'm not aware of any. It's a WECA meeting coming up on the 1st of July, Joint Committee. Item 8, the forward plan for the 1st of June. This is on the record and for noting. So, again, unless there are any questions, I'm looking for a signal from colleagues that they're all happy. Yep, some hands up and some nods. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, on to the first substantive item then on today's agenda, Bus Service Improvement Plan Enhanced Partnership. Looking to Councillor Steve Hogg to present, please. Steve.
Thanks very much. Yeah, my first formal executive meeting, and I've got the first item on the agenda, so that's great how that's worked out. What a time to be coming to the executive. I mean, before I start, actually, I feel I should just spend just a couple of seconds paying tribute, I think, to somebody that's worked for the council for over 2 decades and has been a huge source of help and support to me in the short time that I've been on the executive, but certainly in the 3 years that I've been a councillor. I'd like to wish Colin Meadus the very, very best, I'm sure, on behalf of the executive and the council in whatever he chooses to do next. I know he's got some exciting plans coming up. Don't be a stranger is probably what I'd say. In other words, give us your mobile number before you go. But thanks very much for your help. And, you know, the team of officers have been really supportive to me. James and Carl are here from the team, both been very supportive. But yeah, so to introduce the paper, I'm delighted to be here as exec member of Highways and Transport. Such lucky timing for me, I guess. I'm conscious that, you know, so often in recent years, we're probably meeting here and choosing between very difficult choices about which services to cut. And here I am with the prospect of a significant, transformational, life-changing, once-in-a-generation funding stream that has the potential to promise not only to transform our bus services in North Somerset and regionally, actually, but also accelerate our decarbonation decarbonisation plans and complement our active travel and livable neighbourhood strategies. So it's incredible timing. I mean, it couldn't come at a better time, actually, because if we look at the context in which we're currently in, 43% of our current emissions as a local authority come from transport. That's higher than our regional neighbours. And so we don't have a choice, really, but to become less dependent on the motor car. That's a reality, actually. And we need to give people realistic alternatives to that. And we need to work quite quickly. I heard somewhere, and this is a bit anecdotal from me, so please don't fact check me. I think I'm pretty accurate when I say that to reach our net zero ambitions, we've got to reduce emissions by something like 17% year on year over the next few years. And I think during COVID, I think we saw a reduction of about 19%. So that gives you an idea of the scale of the challenge that we've got. So obviously BSIP, I would think the executive is no stranger to BSIP. I think in October 2021, this executive approved the adoption of BSIP in partnership with WECA, and that relationship in this context has proved to be extremely successful. We've been notified by DFT, and you'll see the letter in Appendix 1 on the attached report, of an indicative funding allocation for WECA of 105 million. 48 million pounds of this is capital funding specifically for North Somerset Council, and we will also have a significant share of a pooled 57 million pounds in revenue funding. So that is truly transformational and unprecedented, I think. I think the second highest nationally of this type of award, so it is significant. So it seems the government has recognised how much we've got to do regionally, and I think in awarding North Somerset Council such a high sum of 48 million, I think there's an acknowledgement there that we've probably got disproportionately more to do than others, is how I've read it. At the highest level, the capital funding is all about bus prioritisation. So that's kind of engineering interventions that you would see in the commissioning plan. And the revenue is going to help to develop eye-catching services and provide concessionary support with the aim of bringing about a step change in public transport and driving up patronage so that people see public transport as a genuine alternative to the car. So sitting alongside that is the draft enhanced partnership, and this is the delivery mechanism, and actually it's a DFT condition of funding. So it's the delivery mechanism by which BSIP will be delivered. So if we think about it as a sort of regulatory framework where we have WECA, North Somerset Council, the bus operators and the highways authorities, making legally binding commitments to improvements. Basically, it's a way of setting out all of the collective asks between the partners. And some of the outcomes of BSIP and the enhanced partnership you'll find in section 3.17 of the report includes things like rural schemes, for example, demand responsive transport, pilots for those, more affordable services, simplified fare structures, viewing bus stops, every bus stop as a shop window for the service. So I know our bus stops, we have members quite rightly calling out, members of the community calling out where we have a lot to do to bring our bus stops and bus shelters up to standard. Higher frequency buses, so every 60 minutes, but if we're looking at the proposed high transit corridors like the A370, the A38, every 20 to 30 minutes. Basically, because of the DFT timescale, some of the formal decisions will need to happen at pace. So the adoption of the final plan, enhanced partnership plan, you'll see some of the timescales in section 1.6. So we're going to need to agree a level of delegation to meet the timescales. So I would just like to caveat that. So I fully intend to engage. I'm prepared to take ideas from the executive about how we continue to engage through scrutiny or through full council or through a working group. But essentially, the timescales are such that we're under some pressure to meet some of the DFT timescales. So I'm asking for two broad areas of approval today. So firstly, that the exec notes the current draft enhanced partnership as attached to the report and delegate to me as exec member the authority to approve the final version on behalf of the council. And the exec approves me as the delegated authority to determine any matters arising in relation to the funding offer and spending profile, and that the exec notes the indicative funding amount. And then secondly, the other broad area that I'm looking for today is approval of the commissioning plan, so that the exec takes BSIP to full council on July the 12th and request approval of the commissioning plan that will deliver BSIP, that we improve the increase in capital programme of 48 million and delegate to the Director of Corporate Services an increase in the revenue budget in respect of BSIP of whatever amount that is, whatever share of that 57 million pool is. That's it, basically. That's what I'm asking for. And if just before I sort of hand it back to the floor, I just look to Colin to see if he wants to add anything.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say thank you for your kind words at the beginning. I just wanted to update. We have had a meeting with DFT quite recently, and they have responded about the proposed revenue funding, which is set out in the report on page 8. They have commented that compared to other areas and in terms of what they were looking for, they were wanting the fares reduction package, which is the second line C1, to be significantly higher than the 9 million that is set out there, with a corresponding reduction in the ambitions to deliver high frequency services and more supported services, which is the top line A1 and the line I3, which, if you add those two together, is about 40 million, and the fares reduction is currently 9. So we're still working that through, but it's quite likely that that 9 million will increase quite significantly, possibly up to close to 20 million, with the those two other lines reducing down to about 30 million rather than the 40. And that is based on sort of the direction we've had from the government. I think my view on that is that's okay, actually, because that will mean a more generous fares reduction package to users that will make the bus services more attractive. And on the other hand, we know that there are still ongoing issues with drivers. So actually having a large amount of money into additional supported services and frequency enhancements might be a little tricky to deliver. So actually switching the money into the fares reduction probably makes sense at this stage. So, I think that is, a helpful advice back from the department, which I think we should be following. But I just needed to bring that to members' attention, given that it's a slight difference to what is set out currently in the report.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you very much, Steve, for presenting the report. Are there any other officer comments before I invite? I think so. I don't know whether there are any questions or comments from non-executive members who might be listening online. I'll go to Councillor Havison first, and then Terry Porter.
Yeah, I don't know whether this is... I seem to remember that at some briefing we were told that the bus parking, that the parking charges were tied to this package as well, in as much as it should be cheaper to take the bus than to drive your car in and park it. Is that correct?
I think I'm going to hand over to the officer on this one, but I think parking inevitably is going to be part of the conversation. Colin, did you want to make a
So it's not explicitly linked, no. Government is encouraging us to think about the relationship between parking and bus use, but at the moment it doesn't. It's not explicitly linked, no.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Corinne. I saw Councillor Terry Porter with his hand up online. Terry, over to you.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, Steve. Congratulations on your appointment. I think transport and buses will be one of your challenges. Can you hear me? Hello?
Carry on, Terry.
Sorry, I couldn't hear anything. I lost all the sound.
We can hear you.
Oh, that's okay then. Yeah, all it was I brought a petition to council at the last meeting from 130 residents at Oak Tree Park out at Locking, which is only a couple of miles outside Weston. And the best that the council's come up with now is a community transport one, which is going to cost each of those residents there. And bear in mind, the average age is over 60. More than 50% have got no cars. That it's £5 per person to get into Weston. So if there's a couple goes in, it costs them £10 each way. That's even more than a taxi would. I hope when you get some of this other funding, you look at trying to support, some of the other residents around North Somerset, because there's quite a few people that have very limited public transport access, and they actually don't have the cars, which obviously a lot of us have the benefit of. So perhaps when you get some time, you'll start to look into some of these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. I'm not sure if anyone wants to come back on that. Steve?
I'm happy to pick up. With the ward members separately on that. I mean, what I would say is that I think that we need to look at when we're looking at bus prioritisation, we have to find ways of promoting and getting patronage up, and I want to include all of the community in that. This isn't just about this just isn't about commercial services. I think we also need to look at ways that we support the community. So, I'm really happy to look at that. But I'm not aware of the petition, but I'd like to catch up with them separately, perhaps after the meeting.
Thank you, Steve. I can't see any more hands. Sorry, Terry. I just said thank you.
That's fine. I'll contact Steve and try and get a meeting with him. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Right, colleagues, I first go to Councillor Bell and then Councillor Caniford.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Steve. Good report, and I think you've articulated a lot of the reasons why this is a really welcome and important set of proposals and plan for improving bus services. There were just two things that I just wanted to mention and throw into the mix as part of the conversation. So the first one is a sort of point of detail, and that is that when we discuss the bus service improvement plan, and particularly the enhanced partnership with operators back in the autumn, I did make a plea that we put as much focus as we could on the expectation that operators properly consult and engage with communities on service changes, and I don't think that there's been any real change to the enhanced partnership in the meantime around that, and I really would still like to see that more strongly articulated in the draft plan before it's signed off finally. So at the moment it still just puts the expectation that operators will work with the transport authorities to engage with local communities, but I just worry that that's not strong enough, and that feels a bit like continuity where we are now. And we know that when services changes happen, it's really important that the community is engaged, understands what those changes are, what the options are about different ways of delivering and rising to fill the gaps, and particularly for town and parish councils and for community transport groups who might want to step in and support services in some way. And I think at the moment we've still got a bit of a model of the bombshell is dropped that the service is being withdrawn, and then everyone has to run to catch up in terms of trying to fill that gap. And I'd just like to see a much greater process of engagement and involvement for communities and bus users and town and parish councils so that we can try and address that. So just to make the plea again, Steve, when you're looking at that and signing off that enhanced partnership, can we do more? Can we go further to put some real definition around what we expect operators to be doing differently going forward? And then the second thing I just wanted to say is that it's great that we've got all this money and all these plans for capital investment in particular, but can we just keep a healthy focus on getting the basics right and not just falling into the trap of doing lots of new things and exciting and shiny things, because I think we do recognise, the report recognises that we've got some basic infrastructure challenges with what's already out there, particularly in terms of the condition of a lot of our bus stops, the access to information that's available to bus users across the district. It is poor at the moment, I think, and notwithstanding prices and services, to have information out there that in some cases is 2, 3, 4, 5 years out of date is just not acceptable. So let's focus on getting some of those basics right as well, and not just trying to move into new and exciting new things too.
Thank you, Mike. Steve, I'll come to you at the end if that's okay. I'll take a comment. So Mark and Bridget.
Thanks, Steve's. Yeah, just a couple of points I'd like to make. I think the price reduction is really good news. I think it's something I was hankering on, and at the time we didn't have the position to do that. So that is good news that it's come back with that change. And I know how hard officers work on this. I mean, Stagecoach 50, the route which officers put together initially as a possible subsidised scheme, but I think it's doing so well it probably won't be. I'm told that it's doing very well. You'll get the figures back in time, but I want to thank you certainly for the residents around the hillside who have found that service really good and are using it, and we keep publicising that, and I think elected members need to keep doing that to make sure they get back to their original user numbers. I think one of the things I just wanted to highlight to Steve when he's procuring and looking at what services we are, what we have to do, if we want to talk about carbon reduction and bus services in the same context, we've got to be using bus services where they really are needed and not where we fancy. So if you've got two people being brought 40 miles from a village, but you've got people jumping in their cars and coming 1.5 miles because we're not putting enough services on, that is damaging our environment a great deal more. And therefore we do have to keep looking at how, if we're going to talk about those two things in the same sentence, how we're going to get the most people on buses and what routes they would have to be. Because I think that is the only way we are going to start challenging our carbon figures, not by just trying to put as many people on buses or just trying to fall to councillor pressures.
Thank you, Mark. Bridget.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I was late because the bus didn't come. I'm a really big champion, as the officers know, of using the bus, and I try to support it wherever I can. If I take my children out, they often say, this was the best day ever because we took the bus. And that is what we need, and I'm really pleased to see this report talking about step change. I'm really welcoming the work that Steve is championing here and all the hard work of the officers, because I know they work hard, and I know that Colin has worked for many years on this work and won't be part of the team soon, so I want to personally thank you for all of your dedication to this service. As I've referenced, reliability and frequency. If people can't trust them to get the bus to get you to work or to get you home to your childcare, they cannot continue to use that service. Fortunately, I did encourage my husband to get the bus to Weston-super-Mare yesterday, but 2 hours later, he could not return and was late home, and that could have jeopardized him picking up children, additional costs, stress. So I really hope that this can demonstrate, this funds can, as Mike Bell referenced, demonstrate that the basics will be done well. The reliability, the frequency, the pricing that feels appropriate, especially as fuel prices on private cars goes up and up. It's really important that our tickets are linked and people can travel from one type of bus onto another type of bus. Speaking to a resident from Dundry, they can't do that right now. We've got people who need to use it for commuting and people who need to use it for leisure. And then we need to remember those who cannot drive, either because they have a specific disability or for another reason, and they rely on our bus services. I was actually really delighted to receive an email from a resident in Nailsea last week who uses a wheelchair to travel, and she wrote positive feedback to us, so I passed that on to the team because she's using the new bus service going through Nailsea to get to Clevedon and to get to Bristol. So wholeheartedly support this work. I just think we really need to demonstrate that we can deliver this and make a sustainable change that the community can rely upon, so that their car journeys can go down and down in our work, both to address climate change, but also there is a different emotional state you can have while sitting on a bus, reading, listening to a podcast, catching up on emails. That's quite different to sitting in your private car getting stressed out as the traffic lights go red and things like that. So we need a mindset change as well, but let's offer a better service. A final point, I would like it to be clearer to residents what they should do when they find a buses are not showing up or the information. Should they be reporting to First Bus, or should we as the council have a good oversight on the reliability, and should residents be communicating to us about that? Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Catherine Gibbons. Catherine.
Thank you. I won't make the same points other colleagues have made already, though I might have. I just wanted to thank Colin as well for all his work and to wish him all the best in the future. And as Steve said, hopefully he won't lose touch with North Somerset completely. And the other thing I was going to say is that there's a lot of expectation from the public since this news filtered out, especially in my ward and other wards that were affected by bus cuts. So I suppose my plea to Steve is to make sure that everything is as clear and transparent as possible to residents so that they don't work up themselves up to expectation and then find that they're not going to get a wonderful service that they might hope they were going to get. I know it's the same point as Councillor Bell made about engagement, but I think it's, as you said, Bridget, it's about how we communicate, and I think we need regular updates on a ward level as to what this means to people for their ongoing bus services. And on the point about reliability, that is particularly important for some of our SEND learners because we work really, really hard for them to develop independence and to be able to use buses to get to and fro. And a break in routine can really knock confidence. So again, you need the sort of communication routes so that they can find out early on if there's a delay. There's a lot to think about, but with extra money, we can perhaps design a really, really top quality service for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Bridget, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, sorry, a final comment I wanted to make was around, Steve Hogg, you made reference to whether there should be a working group or a task and finish group. I think that because of the significant nature of this piece of work and the significant nature of how it impacts or has the potential to positively or potentially, not quite deliver for many, I think that I would be in support of some kind of working group or task and finish group, potentially out of one of the policy and scrutiny panels, because I think that a range of councillors who represent residents from across the district would have helpful support, especially in those areas that Catherine was referencing on how best we communicate the decisions that are being made and the tone and the language and the when and the what of that communication aspect. As councillors, as representatives of our community, I think that we can help to filter through what is jargon and what is common sense language so that people can feel well informed. Thank you.
Thanks, Bridget. Steve, back to you. Do you want to, there's a few takeaways there. I'm not sure if you want to come back on with some comments.
Well, I can come back on some comments on what people have been mentioning here. And of course, a lot of this is, it's no surprise. And you are pushing on an open door with me. So one of the things I made very clear from day one was how passionate I am about community engagement. And that's about having conversations with the public, leveraging the support of ward members and parish councils to make sure the messages are being delivered at a local level. And I agree with you that we've got to bring people on this journey with us. And it's much more than about buses. This will hopefully be a catalyst for a very transformational period within North Somerset, which will bring in things like active travel, livable neighbourhoods, and we can begin to have discussions and open up debate about a lot of other things. Now, behaviour change is all part of this. So how do we get people out of their cars and onto buses? And the reality is, just telling people it's a good idea is a little bit like telling people they should be recycling their plastic every Thursday night. Some of us will sort of do it and sort of do a reasonable job, but really it's not going to have the desired effect. What we really need to do is provide demonstrable alternatives to car travel. So engagement is really important. Councillor Bell talked about focusing on the basics. This is also something that I've made very clear from the get-go, really, is that a little bit like when you book a hotel room, you really don't care about there being a widescreen TV or a Michelin-starred restaurant if there's no loo roll in the bathroom of your toilet. So I'm all over that. We do definitely need to continue to get the basics right and to look at those sort of hygiene factors, if you like, on the existing services. I think it was Ash, or it could have been Mark, that was talking about it's all very well having all of these super duper buses, but if people can't get to the bus, then that's a problem. And I think this is where we need to focus on the first and final mile, and we need to be thinking about active travel routes and other options for demand responsive transport in rural areas and other areas to connect to these new services. A lot of what's going to be delivered, and Colin, officers, please correct me, keep me honest here, but a lot of what's going to be delivered won't be a thing on wheels. It'll be something which will facilitate much higher throughput. So it'll be things like engineering interventions within the road network, reallocation of road space in order to provide that prioritisation for buses so that buses aren't held up in congested traffic. And of course, the more of that we do, the more people see that that's a bit of a sell, and you think, well, I might as well just get on a bus because getting there by car is getting harder. So a lot of it isn't actually buses, it's actually engineering projects. Bridget, you talked about reliability and frequency, and I think that's a fundamental part of the requirement of the funding bid. I mean, there's a lot of the raison d'etre behind what we're doing there is about increased reliability and frequency, and we can do that with some of our road reallocation schemes and some of the schemes that we've got programmed. And of course, those will all come to scrutiny or full council or wherever, so we can have plenty of time to talk about those going forward. And then the task and finish group. I mean, I'm really happy to do whatever works best, and you know, I'll probably need to be instructed on how we facilitate that, but I'm really happy to support a task and finish group as an output of a scrutiny panel at some point. So yeah, thank you for all of your comments.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hogg. I mean, I would just say, obviously, following on from what you said, Steve, that obviously reports to the executive and indicative funding awards don't in themselves change behaviour. We need to deliver this, obviously, but we are talking about a potentially transformational sum of money here. So a terrific result on the bid. So thank you, Team BSIP. Absolutely fantastic. Steve, I presume you're proposing, I won't read out the recommendations, they're quite chunky, and some of those are going forward to July Council, but I assume you're proposing. So looking for a seconder? Yeah. Mike, thank you very much. Mike Solomon. And go to a vote then. All those in favour of the recommendations as put. Thank you very much. Unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Steve. Moving on to item 10 on the agenda, which is a bit of a mouthful. Award of contract and authorisation to enter into a joint venture with the recommended development partner for land to the south of the uplands in Nailsea. And there is an exempt appendix to this item, but I think we can proceed on the basis that colleagues would have seen that appendix. We've been briefed. So Councillor Caniford, over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, this is fairly straightforward. A great deal of work's gone into this. We're looking to appoint a development partner and also give the authority to our Section 151 officer to deal with the final contracts and the transfer of the land. I think, as you say, exec members are aware of the deal. This has been a 2 to 3 year process now, and it does meet all the council's objectives within its development programme. And this development, or the proposals that have been put in place, would be of flagship standard. It's designed by Michael Riches, who are Sterling Prize-winning architects, and they will be providing us with passive housing. And I think one of the things which impressed me, and I have to congratulate the team, which I'll do a bit later, is the fact that we've managed to get 40% affordable housing in this development, which is where we and our aspiration in the local plan is. So even before that is done, we're even on our own land, we're getting those same levels of affordables. Of 16 of those homes will be adaptable for those with disabilities, and also future-proofing the homes for people in ageing circumstances. And the benefit, of course, another benefit, is they will be 10% bigger than the national space standards, which will include making space available for home working and responding to the ways that we are changing in the way we live in our homes. The procurement has gone on for about 6 months in several stages. We've engaged with all the local members. All the local members have been asked and have been engaged with and have been involved in each stage. including scrutiny. And we now would like to recommend that Stonewood Partnerships, which is a small company, but is growing, undoubtedly, simply because they are trying to create the sort of properties aspirational properties that councils are looking for these days, and they understand our sustainability requirements. The report set out arrangements for the sale of the land, but we retain the land. We're learning lessons here. We certainly retain the land until it is fully built and certified. So none of the homes can be sold until we are happy with the standards that have been met. Stonewood and North Somerset Council, and again, with the help from Jenny Ford, Jeff Barkspear, Miranda Huntley and Holly Wilkins, have come up with some really good elements to this, and it is in the report, is that we will be offering those homes where we can, and when I say where we can, we will be making it very clear to local residents that these homes are becoming available at certain times. So where we can't stop other people buying them, we can make sure local people are aware of them before other people, and therefore local people will get the first shout to buy or rent. So I would like to look for support on the recommendations which are in the report, and move this process forward. So.
Thank you very much, Mark. Mark's proposing. I'm looking for a seconder to Mark. Thank you, Ash. I can see, Mark, you reference 3 or 4 officers. We've got Jenny Ford and
We've
Alex
got Jenny
Hearn
Ford
here.
to answer any questions.
Jenny, is there anything you want to add at this point? No? Okay. Any comments from non-executive members who might be online? Or Phil, Councillor Neve, over to you.
Hi, thanks very much. I won't keep you long. I'd just like to say initially, I'm absolutely delighted this is happening. I've worked in domestic energy and in... Can you hear all right? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I've worked in this sector for 20 years and as a passive house designer for 12 years. So this is just joy. There's a couple of points I'd like to make. And one is that the key to delivery on these sort of projects is a clear set of non-negotiable targets, which the papers seem, I've read through the papers, and you seem to have that, and I'm delighted that's been so well structured. It also requires a very good team of experienced professionals who not only know what is needed, but how to deliver it. And having worked with architects from Mikhail Ritchie's and with Greengage in the past, I know you've got some great people there. So that's good. There are problems in conventional delivery of construction projects where staff change, companies change, things are swapped out, and that's what leads to reduction in quality and failure. I think that is unlikely to happen in this case because of the structure you're putting in place. I would just say one thing, that this is new ground both for North Somerset, it's new ground for the contractors who are obviously trying to drive something exactly where they need to, something new, something better, something different. And there will be difficulties, there will be barriers that they come across. And I just urge that there is some form of monitoring and record keeping and discussions right the way through, so that at the end of the process, we can look at it and say, well, what went right, that's great, but what went wrong that we can do better next time? Because I really hope that we can learn from this one and deliver these sort of projects across our own development sites that we're currently looking at. So yeah, great, absolute support. Good luck with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Neve. Any other comments from non-exec members? No. Catherine.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very exciting project and I really welcome it. It's going to be fantastic. I just wanted to ask a question. I've asked it before in other context. In terms of the properties that are going to be accessible, is there any opportunity as this moves forward for groups such as the Parent Carers Forum and other disability groups to be engaged with? I'm not saying a formal consultation, but just to allow them to understand what the properties that are accessible will be like, and maybe feedback some ideas about what would make a really ideally accessible property.
Okay, yeah, thank you. A couple there. Yes, there will be monitoring of this site, and you're quite right. It is a new type of build. It is what we need to be seeing, and I think the greatest benefit of being able to do this on a piece of land of our own is the fact that we can set the standard, and I think that's so important to try and show other developers what can be achieved and how it can be achieved. But I'll hand you on to Jenny in just a second to discuss those in terms of monitoring. And I'm sure in terms of the use of the home, Councillor Gibbons, I think they probably have been engaged, not individuals, I'm sure, but again, we'll have that confirmed in terms of I'm talking the national planning policy, but well, Jenny can fill us in with that.
Thank you, Mark. Jenny, before I come to you, can I just first go to Councillor Bridget Petty? Bridget.
I wanted to comment on how proud I am that the officers and that this organisation, this council, is taking so seriously our role of being disruptors, because the housing system is broken. Major house developers are taking our land from across North Somerset, and they are building cookie-cutter houses that people don't want to live in. They are building houses without proper design. They are building leaky houses. They are still building houses that are exceedingly expensive, but are not future-proof. And it's absolutely distressing and disgusting what is happening across this country in terms of the house developers' power and influence they have. Sorry, I'm feeling very strongly about this, but this is an example of how a council, a rainbow administration, a bold administration who has climate change at the heart of it, but also has social justice and caring about housing properly and caring about our residents properly, is trying to build some better houses and some homes for people. And the fact that it's 40% affordable, I'm going to put hyphens on the affordable because, just to warn you, I'm really sorry, but the definition of affordable is still horrid, but we're working with what we've got. So thank you, officers, for pushing this disruptive housing approach and building better and showing that we can build houses and build homes for people. And I'm glad that we found a good partner in this organisation. And thank you, Phil Neve, for contributing ideas around proper monitoring so that we can really deliver better results. But I hope that the residents of Nailsea end up with some houses they can be really proud of. I know that any development on the edge of a town or a village is always troublesome, threatening, emotionally exhausting. But I think in a few years' time, they will have a street of houses they can be really proud of, because these are prize-winning architects and these will be quality contractors and homes that demonstrate that this council takes this seriously in delivering homes that are fit for the future and fit for all of our residents, including those with disabilities and different additional needs. So thank you to the officers for their hard work.
Thank you very much, Bridget, for that. Here. Jenny, did you want to come back on some of Catherine's points?
Yeah, and thank you for all the really nice comments. It's very heartening to have some good news stories. I'll just pick up on Phil Neve's comments about monitoring lessons learned. Yeah, very, very much agree. However good a design team, however good a development team, there are always some issues, and it's really important to keep track of those. But in terms of the actual construction itself, as he will know, one of the reasons that Passive House is a real positive is that the construction is monitored by a Passive House inspector, and to secure Passive House standard, you have to build a really good quality, well-constructed house. And so that is a major bonus as far as I'm concerned. In terms of the accessibility engagement, we have done some engagement already with the Nailsea Disability Initiative. The designs are at a fairly advanced stage, but knowing what the ethos is of Michael Richards and hopefully Stonewood, I'm sure we can look at some further engagement on the kind of detailed delivery. And then finally, and just on disruption to the market, just to say it's already happening to an extent, because certainly one of the suppliers that we put Stonewood in touch with, that we've been talking to through the design phase to inform the designs, they thought, who are a very sustainable-minded supplier, Stonewood said, they're brilliant, we're going to use them on our other projects as well. So small steps can sort of lead to bigger steps.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Yeah, I'd just like to endorse the comments really from colleagues. I mean, for years we've been looking for beacon projects, beacon developments, years, and on land we own. And yes, they can be locally controversial. We need to listen to local residents, of course, but we can demand more. We can go over and above what the market often brings forward. Just to pick up on Bridget's point. So yeah, thank you, Jenny and Alex and team. So, and thank you, Mark. So we have a proposer and seconder, so I think we can move direct to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you very much. Unanimous. Thank you, colleagues. Moving on to item 11, which is the 21-22 financial year outturn, really, isn't it? It's the month 12 budget monitor and financial update. So, Ash, to introduce, please.
Thank you, Steve. And coming on the back of Passive House and a bus service improvement plan, I will do my best. But this is good news, I think, because what it means is that the council fundamentally balanced its budget last year, and the finance of any organisation is the engine room, I always think. And without this working properly, HMS North Somerset Council is going nowhere. So this means we are going somewhere because we can look after our money and spend appropriately. So it's good news. I'm going to ask Amy for some comments in a minute, but I won't speak for long, really, just to go through the recommendations. There was a slight underspend. We're transferring that into reserves, which is good in the uncertainty we face going forward. Keeping appropriate general reserves to meet unforeseen risks is very important. Our reserves have gone up as a whole that are earmarked in the period by about 20 million, and that's detailed in the report. Just a quick thing to say that on recommendation 2, it should refer to Appendix 5, not Appendix 4. Recommendations 3 and 4 very much talk about amendments to the revenue and capital programme, which you can see in the appendices. And items number 5 and 6 are about incorporating funding and spending allocations into our budget to do with an integrated care section 256 agreement, which is all about improving pathways out of hospitals and care. So I'll pass over to Amy, if I may, if she wants to make anything, and then just answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cartman. You've summarised exactly what I was going to, actually, from the paper. So just to reiterate, obviously, it's pleasing to note that despite the challenges in the last year with all sorts of pandemic-related issues affecting our services, the 691,000 underspend, and obviously that the transfers to and from earmarked reserves, as outlined, are effectively designed to support risks as they arise, as well as specific activities such as that outlined for the CCG. And rolling forward plans which cover more than one financial year over the year end. But nothing more to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Ash. Any comments from non-exec members? No hands going up. Colleagues? Bridget.
Thank you very much to all the officers who've taken and the energy that it takes to keep this ship afloat and balance these budgets, because I do understand that there are so many competing pressures and competing services, all vying for what is ultimately not enough money to do all that we might do and wish to do for our communities. With regards to our underspend highlighted in this report, I just wanted to congratulations to those who have managed that budget and managed to see us through that situation. I think I just wanted to ask that should there be emergencies and corporate priorities, that fund to ensure the delivery of our corporate priorities in this coming year, that where possible we have conversations that if a service might just lead that little bit more, not all of it, just to get it over that line and continue to serve our residents well, that we use some of those funds when we have emergencies and when we have cases where it is a priority. And I guess I just wanted to raise that and ask, is that possible?
Ash?
Yeah. So the current priorities we set out in the corporate plan form the basis of the current year budget, and we manage through the year to balance the budget in its entirety. So we will always get some overs and unders within that to make sure we deliver on the priorities. The last resort, and Amy will correct me if I'm wrong, is to look into the general reserve, which this is going into, but it does sit there for the purpose of meeting unexpected need, although it's like a rainy day fund. You really only need to go into it when it's a rainy day and not when it's sun shining and you want to buy an ice cream, which I know you know. So I think we've got no problem with making sure that we allocate the funds that we've got to the priorities that we see fit. And if there's particular concerns you have over particular projects and funding, do come to me and we'll see what we can do. Is that?
Okay. Any other comments, colleagues? Don't think so. So I'd like to add my thanks actually to you, Ash. Thank you, but in particular to Amy, to Mel and the wider team. No mean feat to balance the budget at the end of a year, particularly in such a challenging environment. And I know there's lots of reconciliation work needed to close out the year. So thank you very much indeed. Ash, you're proposing. Looking for seconder. Thank you, Mark. Let's move to a vote. All those in favour of recommendations? Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Moving on to item number 12, adoption of heritage assets onto the North Somerset Local Heritage List. Mark Canford again. Mark.
Thank you. This shouldn't be controversial, but just a very brief couple of notes. The heritage list is currently focuses on Weston-super-Mare, and it is funded by the Great Western Heritage Zone. It actually, as it happens, it didn't get any nominations from other parts of North Somerset, but we are working on that. We are going after this stage because we only try and have 20 buildings or assets at a time because the panel work free of charge for us. And these sites go through a process to make sure they meet the criteria for that adoption. So we are planning to have a series of outreach engagements in the rest of the district moving forward to make sure we make sure we get all of the assets onto our heritage list, which would include parishes and heritage groups. We will be, depending on the workload of course, we will be intending to add to this list about every 6 months. So I would like to recommend that we adopt the heritage assets and put them onto the North Somerset Heritage List, but I would also like to quickly take this opportunity to thank Kate Hudson-Macaulay and thank Councillor Crawford-Hawley for his role as the Heritage Champion and the time he has put into this and sat on the panel, I believe, at times. So I would like to thank those two and the rest of the team. But I would like support as seconder for the recommendations.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Mark. As you say, Mark, this is the start of the process, isn't it? So, right. Let's move to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Moving on to item 13, appointments to outside bodies. Nick, I think there's three additional executive appointments and an amendment, is that right?
That's correct, Chairman. There are 3 new appointments as listed in the recommendations, so we're looking for nominations to those. And then I know that obviously one of the items in the schedule, that's the schedule as current, so that needs to be updated. I know one of those is shown as Councillor Davies, that will become yourself. I suggest where possible we make them by designation rather than named individuals, because obviously that then flows when positions change, the appointments automatically change. If you're able to advise today, that's great. Otherwise, let me know outside of the meeting.
Are we able to? I think there's some obvious picks here in terms of the Visit West board. Is that you, Mark? Yeah. West of England Combined Authority Business and Skills Board.
That's Mark and I, isn't it?
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. This council has 2 appointments to the Waker Business and Schools Board, so sorted. Okay. Do we need to take a vote on that?
If you're happy, I'll update.
Just for noting. Good. Thank you, Nick. Item 14, oral reports from executive members. I won't go round the room. I'll just look for people to put their hand up if they want to say anything. Mike Solomon.
Yeah, and I just want to take the opportunity to bring the executive up to date on where we are with the garden waste take-up. As of yesterday, we're running at around 73% of people that were taking the service have taken it up again, and we've got quite a few new people that have come on board, but it looks as if the take-up is going to be lower as it's coming to the end of the sign-up period. So now it's going to be a matter of, if you haven't signed up, our waste teams won't be picking up your green beans in the future. There won't be a leeway situation. So I'd encourage people, if they haven't signed up, to sign up now.
Thank you very much, Mike. Any other comments? I can't see any hands up. I had a couple of very brief ones, and I think like the last executive meeting, they're to do with long service. So we said, I think last week, or I think Joe, I think you were saying just now actually, we were saying goodbye to Pam Kirby, who is now retired. So Pam has been your PA, PA to the Chief Executive, and has led our senior leadership support team. And I think Pam has finally skipped away from the council after a quarter of a century. I know that Pam worked with very many colleagues, obviously, over the years, and will be greatly missed in her role. So if Pam is listening, if she's come in from the garden sunshine, I mean, she's not going to be listening, is she? But I hope the message will get to Pam that we are deeply appreciative, truly, of the service she's given to North Somerset Council, and I wanted to add to your comments, Steve, about Colin. He's left the chamber, but Colin has been with the council for 23 years, and has currently in the role of public transport, head of public transport transformation, and doing a lot of terrific work, as you alluded to, Steve, around the BSIP bid. And I think we'll be saying goodbye to Colin on Friday afternoon at a suitable seafront location. Hopefully the sun will continue to shine on Sunday. But again, thank you very much to Colin for his amazing work over the years. There was one other thing actually, which I know it's the Western Air Show this weekend, but I'm also mindful that the third rail strike is also on Saturday. I'm not sure whether that's, obviously that causes particular issues for those wishing to attend the air show by public transport, unfortunately. So I guess there would be an impact. I'm not sure, Mike, whether there's anything we've got to say on that.
No, just come and enjoy. Unfortunately, there will be a strike, but the buses will be running, and of course, there is ample parking. Indeed.
And the event's still on. Mike?
Yeah, I've been informed that there are only 7 of the red arrows now and not 9. I'm just wondering if it's because of the fuel costs.
Boom, boom. Thank you, Mike. Okay, that's it, I think. So thank you to everyone who's been in the room, and thank you to those listening online. Thank you, Karin, for coming to the chamber. Item 15, urgent business. I don't think there is any, so I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much.